The sun was slowly sinking behind the tall red rocks of the desert, painting the sky with warm orange and gold colors. The wind carried a soft whistle through the dry land. Far away, a man walked with tired feet and a quiet heart. His name was Samuel. For many months he had been traveling alone across wide lands, looking for a place where he could start a new life. He was not a rich man nor a famous one. He was just a wanderer who loved the open sky and the songs of nature. Samuel's boots were dusty, and his hat had lost its shine, but his eyes still held a spark of hope. He loved the calm of the wilderness. He had spent many nights sleeping under the stars and many mornings watching the world wake up in silence. But this evening felt different. He felt as if something was waiting for him beyond the hills. The desert air grew cooler as he walked. His water bottle was nearly empty, and his stomach made quiet sounds of hunger. He had not seen another person for days. Yet, when he stopped near a small ridge, he saw something in the distance. It was thin smoke rising gently into the sky. His heart jumped. Smoke meant fire, and fire meant people. People meant water, food, or at least a place to rest. Samuel carefully followed the smoke, moving slowly so he wouldn't startle anyone. As he came closer, the land opened into a hidden valley, a quiet place surrounded by strong rock walls. There he saw small wooden shelters and fires burning softly. Men, women, and children were gathered together. It was not a big village, but it felt alive. He had found an Apache camp. For a moment, Samuel stood still, unsure what to do. He knew enough about these lands to understand that this was not a place for careless strangers. The Apache people were strong and proud. If they felt threatened, they could chase him away. But he also saw something in their faces that touched his heart. They looked worried. The children were sitting close to their mothers, and the men spoke in quiet, serious tones. It was not the sound of celebration. It was the sound of people facing trouble. Samuel slowly raised his hands to show he carried no harm. He stepped forward and spoke softly. "Hello. I come in peace." The people noticed him. A few young men quickly walked toward him, their faces alert but calm. One of them held a long stick with feathers tied to it, a sign of the tribe's respect and watchfulness. They didn't attack him. They surrounded him carefully, watching his every move. An older man stepped out from the group. His hair was long and silver, tied neatly behind his head. His eyes were wise but tired. He wore a simple shirt made from soft leather and beads that told the story of his people. This man was the elder of the tribe, White Hawk. He looked at Samuel without speaking at first. The air felt heavy, like the moment before a storm. Samuel took a deep breath. "I'm just passing through," he said calmly. "I saw the smoke. I have no weapon against you. I only seek rest." The elder studied him closely. Then he nodded once. One of the younger men searched Samuel's bag carefully, not roughly but with caution. When they saw nothing dangerous, they stepped aside. The elder lifted his hand slightly, signaling that Samuel was allowed to enter. As Samuel walked into the camp, he noticed how quiet everything was. The children were thinner than he expected. Some of them had dry lips. The fires were small and the food pots were nearly empty. A few women carried bowls with only a little water inside. The men sat in circles talking in low voices. Samuel had traveled through many villages before, but he had never seen an Apache camp this silent. It was as if the whole place was holding its breath. One of the young men guided him to a small space near the fire. A woman brought him a bowl of warm corn soup. It wasn't much, but Samuel was grateful. He ate slowly, not wanting to seem rude. He kept his eyes low, showing respect to the people around him. Slowly, a few children moved closer to look at him. They were curious. He smiled gently at them, and one little boy giggled softly, breaking the tension. Later that evening, as the fire grew brighter, the elder came to sit near Samuel. "You are far from your home," the elder said in a low, deep voice. His English was simple but clear. "Yes," Samuel replied. "I have been walking for many weeks." The elder nodded. "Our land is not easy, but you are brave to walk it alone." Samuel smiled faintly. "I've learned to listen to the wind," he said. The elder's eyes softened a little. He looked up at the night sky, where stars were beginning to shine. After a quiet pause, he spoke again. "Our tribe is in trouble. The river, the water, it is not safe. The children are weak. The old ones are tired. If we cannot find clean water, many will suffer." Samuel's heart tightened. He understood now why the camp felt so heavy. Water was life in these lands. Without it, the tribe would not last long. "What happened to the river?" he asked gently. The elder shook his head. "We do not know. The water changed. It smells bad. It makes people sick. We sent men to find the reason, but they did not return." Samuel thought for a long moment. He had traveled near rivers, streams, and wells for years. He had learned how to find clean water when others could not. He was not a healer or a hero, but he knew the language of the land. He looked at the elder and said softly, "Maybe I can help." The elder's eyes narrowed slightly. He did not speak for a while. Samuel could tell that trust did not come easily here. But the elder also saw something honest in Samuel's eyes. Finally he nodded. "We will see." That night Samuel was given a small blanket and a place near the fire to rest. But sleep did not come easily. He kept thinking about the tribe, the thin faces of the children and the quiet strength of the elder. He felt something deep inside him, a sense of purpose he hadn't felt in a long time. For many years he had only traveled for himself, but now perhaps his journey had brought him here for a reason. The next morning the sun rose over the red rocks and the air smelled of dry sand and smoke. Samuel joined the men who walked toward the river. The path was rough, filled with stones and thorny bushes, but the men moved silently. They did not speak much, but Samuel could feel their worry in every step. The elder walked at the front, steady and calm, as if carrying the weight of every soul in the tribe. When they reached the river, Samuel understood their fear. The water was not clear. It was cloudy and smelled strange. Even the birds avoided it. The men filled a small bowl and showed it to him. "This is all we have," one of them said quietly. Samuel knelt down and touched the water with his fingertips. He brought it close to his nose and frowned. Something was wrong. He walked a little along the riverbank, his boots pressing softly into the damp ground. He noticed broken branches and strange marks near the water. The land seemed disturbed, as if someone or something had passed through recently. Samuel knew this was no accident. He looked at the elder. "Someone has been here," he said. The elder's face grew serious. "We felt it too," he whispered. They walked further, and Samuel studied every sign. He wasn't sure yet what he would find, but he knew one thing clearly. The tribe was in danger, and time was running out. The elder watched him carefully, not with doubt, but with quiet hope. As they returned to the village, the wind grew colder. Samuel looked at the camp ahead, at the children waiting by the fire, at the women holding small bowls of water, at the elder walking slowly beside him. In that moment, Samuel made a silent promise. He would not turn away. He would help them find the truth. He would help them survive. That night, the stars covered the desert like a soft blanket. Samuel lay awake, listening to the quiet sounds of the camp, the crackling of the fire, the distant howl of a coyote, and the whisper of the wind. He was alone no more. For the first time in years, his journey had a purpose that was bigger than himself. The next morning arrived with a soft orange light spreading over the dry land. The red rocks glowed warmly, and a cool breeze moved through the desert like a gentle hand brushing across the world. Samuel opened his eyes slowly, hearing the quiet rustle of people moving in the camp. The Apache tribe was awake early, just as they always were. Life here was built on discipline and respect for the land. He sat up, pulling his old blanket tighter around his shoulders. A young boy ran past, holding a small wooden bowl. A few women were preparing a simple breakfast near the fire. Smoke rose slowly, carrying with it the scent of corn and herbs. Even though the tribe was struggling, they held on to their routines. Samuel admired that. In his years of wandering, he had learned that people who stayed strong in hard times were the ones who truly understood life. Elder White Hawk approached him. His steps were slow but steady, like someone who had walked this land many times and knew every stone by name. His silver hair caught the soft light of the sun. "Today," the elder said gently, "we follow the river." Samuel nodded. He had been waiting for this. He had seen the signs near the water the day before, and he knew there was something hidden upstream. "I'll go with you," he replied quietly. His heart felt calm but focused. A small group of men gathered near the edge of the camp. They carried light bags with dried corn and herbs for the journey. A few carried long sticks that helped them walk across uneven ground. Samuel noticed their faces. They didn't show fear, but their eyes were full of quiet concern. This was more than a journey. It was their last hope to find out why the river was no longer safe. Before they left, a woman stepped forward. She held a small leather pouch and placed it gently in Elder Whitehawk's hands. Inside was a mixture of dried leaves and soft powder made from plants. "For strength," she whispered. The elder nodded with respect. Samuel saw how they cared for each other. This was not just a group of people. This was a family held together by trust and love for their land. They began to walk along the river. The sun was rising higher, but the air was still cool. The river followed a narrow path between rocks and dry grass. Birds circled high above, but they didn't come near the water. That told Samuel everything he needed to know. When even the animals avoided something, it meant danger was close. As they walked, Samuel kept his eyes open. He had spent years in wildlands. He knew how to listen to nature. He noticed small things: the shape of broken branches, the direction of footprints in the sand, the way the water grew darker the further they walked. Every detail spoke to him like a quiet voice telling a story. After an hour, the group stopped under a large tree that leaned slightly toward the river. The elder raised his hand and everyone fell silent. "This is where the land changes," the elder said softly. He bent down and touched the ground with his fingers. The soil was damp and cold. Samuel knelt beside him and noticed something unusual. The water had a thin layer on top, almost like a shadow. It didn't move the way clean water should. "Something is wrong here," Samuel whispered. The elder looked at him. "Yes," he said quietly, "but we don't know where it begins." Samuel stood up and looked around. The land sloped gently upward beyond a row of rocks. If there was something affecting the river, it had to be further ahead. "We should keep going," he said. The elder nodded in agreement. They walked for another long stretch, their feet sinking softly into the damp earth. The sound of water grew quieter, almost as if the river itself was tired. The sun was now high in the sky and the desert heat began to rise. Sweat ran down Samuel's neck, but he didn't complain. The men of the tribe walked silently, their faces calm. They were used to long walks. They had done this many times before. At one point, a young man named Tawa walked beside Samuel. He was tall and quiet, but there was a kindness in his eyes. He spoke in slow English. "You walk like a man who knows the land," he said. Samuel smiled faintly. "I've walked for many years," he replied. "The land teaches if you listen." Tawa nodded. "We listen too," he said. "But this time the land is silent." Samuel understood what he meant. Sometimes when trouble hides in nature, everything becomes still. Even the birds and the wind grow quiet. It's a silence that makes the heart uneasy. After a long walk, they reached a place where the river bent sharply around a wall of rocks. Here the water was even darker. It had a strange smell. Samuel bent down, scooped a little water in his hands, and let it drip slowly back into the river. He closed his eyes for a moment, listening. He didn't have fancy tools or magic, but he had experience. He had seen rivers like this before, when something upstream blocked or spoiled the flow. He climbed carefully over the rocks, looking further ahead. There, beyond the bend, the river was divided. One small stream flowed normally, but the other was trapped behind a pile of branches, stones, and strange black soil. It looked like a natural wall, but it wasn't natural at all. It had been built by someone. Samuel felt a quiet chill run down his spine. "Someone did this," he whispered to himself. Elder Whitehawk joined him on the rocks. He looked at the pile and narrowed his eyes. "This was not here before," he said slowly. Samuel nodded. "This is why your water changed." The men gathered behind them. No one spoke for a while. The sound of the weak water flow filled the silence. Samuel gently pushed one of the branches with his boot. It shifted easily, sending a small wave of clearer water into the main river. The elder watched closely. Samuel looked at him and said softly, "If we can clear this, the water will flow again." The elder placed a hand on Samuel's shoulder, a simple, quiet gesture that said more than words. It was a sign of trust. They didn't have heavy tools, but they had their hands, sticks, and strength. One by one, the men began to pull away the branches and stones. They worked slowly, carefully, respecting the flow of the river. Samuel guided them, showing where to push and where to clear. It was not easy, but their teamwork made the task lighter. As the hours passed, more water began to move freely. The smell in the air grew cleaner. A small bird landed on a nearby branch and sang softly. It was the first sound of life they had heard all day. The elder smiled faintly, a rare and precious smile. But Samuel was not fully at ease. He knew someone had built that barrier for a reason. It didn't look like a natural pile of wood. It had been placed carefully as if to stop the tribe from reaching clean water. He didn't say this out loud. He didn't want to bring fear into the group. For now, the most important thing was to bring the water back. When the last big stone was moved, the river suddenly came alive. Clear water rushed through the gap, filling the dry areas with freshness. The men stepped back, watching the flow with silent relief. It was as if the land itself had taken a deep breath after holding it for too long. The elder touched the water with both hands and lifted it toward the sky. His eyes closed for a moment. Samuel didn't need to understand the words he whispered. It was a prayer, a thank you to the river, to the earth, and to whatever higher spirit they believed in. They filled their small leather pouches with clean water and began the walk back to camp. The sun was lower now, turning the sky into soft gold. Their steps were lighter than in the morning. Even though they had worked hard, their hearts felt a little stronger. Hope is a strange thing. It can fill tired bodies with new energy. On the way back, Samuel walked beside the elder. The old man looked at him and said, "The river listens to you." Samuel shook his head softly. "No," he said. "I just listen to the river." The elder smiled slightly. "Then you understand our land better than many who were born here." When they returned to the camp, the children ran to meet them. They saw the water in the men's hands and their eyes grew wide with joy. A few women cried softly, not from sadness but from relief. The elder raised his hand and said a few quiet words to his people. It wasn't a loud speech. It didn't need to be. Everyone understood. Samuel sat down near the fire as the sun went down. He felt tired, but it was the kind of tired that felt right. He had not done this for reward or glory. He had done it because it was the right thing to do. As the stars began to appear in the night sky, he felt something he had not felt in a long time, a sense of belonging. The tribe sang softly around the fire that night. Their song was gentle and full of warmth. Samuel closed his eyes and listened. He didn't understand the words, but he understood the feeling. The land was breathing again, and so were its people. He didn't know what tomorrow would bring. But tonight he knew this for sure. His path had crossed with the tribe for a reason. The story between him and these people had only just begun. That night the camp was quiet, but it wasn't the kind of silence that brought peace. It was a thoughtful silence. The people of the tribe were relieved that the water had started to flow again. But deep down, everyone knew that the story was not over. Something or someone had created that barrier in the river, and that meant there could be more to face. Samuel lay under the stars, looking at the night sky. The stars stretched far and wide like bright seeds scattered across dark earth. He had traveled many places, but this night felt different. He wasn't just a wanderer anymore. He was part of something bigger. He had helped these people, and in doing so, something inside him had begun to change. He turned to his side and saw the gentle movement of the firelight. A few men sat near the flames, talking softly. Children slept close to their mothers, wrapped in warm blankets. The elder White Hawk sat alone near a wooden post, staring into the darkness with quiet eyes. Samuel could tell the elder was thinking deeply. When the morning came, the sky was clear and soft with light. The desert was cool again, and a soft breeze touched the land. Samuel walked toward the river with a few young boys. He wanted to make sure the water was still flowing cleanly. To his relief, it was. The sound of moving water filled the air, a gentle, steady sound that made the tribe feel alive again. But as he knelt down and touched the water, Samuel noticed something strange. A few leaves floated from upstream, and they weren't the kind that grew near the village. He had traveled long enough to recognize different plants. These leaves came from far away. That meant someone or something was still near the river. Elder Whitehawk joined him a short while later. His footsteps were quiet, but his presence carried weight. "The river speaks again," the elder said softly. Samuel nodded. "Yes, but something is still up there." The elder looked at him with calm but serious eyes. "I feel it too. The land has not rested yet." Later that morning, the tribe gathered near the fire. Samuel sat among them, listening. The elder stood slowly and spoke to his people. His voice was strong, even though it was soft. He spoke in the Apache language, and one of the younger men translated for Samuel. "We must look beyond the rocks," the elder said. "We must understand why the water changed. We must face what is hidden." A quiet wave moved through the people. No one shouted. No one argued. But the weight of the elder's words could be felt by everyone. Samuel knew they would go upstream again, this time further than before. The truth would not be easy to find, but it had to be faced. By midday, a small group was chosen to travel upstream. The elder, a few young warriors, Tawa and Samuel, would go together. This was not a fight, it was a search for answers. The women prepared small packs of food and herbs. Children watched with wide, trusting eyes. Samuel felt the quiet pressure of their hope on his shoulders. He wasn't from this tribe, but in this moment he carried their trust. As they began to walk along the river again, the sun rose high in the sky. The air grew warmer, but their steps were steady. Samuel walked beside Tawa, who carried a small pouch of herbs at his side. They didn't speak much, but there was an unspoken bond between them now. They both wanted to protect something they believed in. The further they walked, the more the land changed. The air smelled different. The ground was covered in more footprints, some human, some animal. Samuel noticed the shape of the prints. They were fresh. Someone had walked here not long ago. He stopped and bent down to look closely. The elder came beside him. "What do you see?" the elder asked quietly. "Someone has been here," Samuel said. "Not from your village. Maybe from far away." The elder didn't look surprised. "The land remembers every footstep," he said softly. "Even when people try to hide, they kept walking." Soon they reached a narrow path between two tall rocks. The river squeezed through it like a silver ribbon. On the other side, the land opened up into a small green space. There were plants growing here. Unlike the dry desert near the camp, it was cooler, as if the place itself held a secret. Samuel looked around carefully. He noticed something that made him pause. There were pieces of cloth stuck in the branches near the river. They were not from the tribe's clothing. The elder saw them too. "This is not ours," he said calmly. They moved forward slowly. The sound of the river grew louder here, as if it was telling its own story. Birds flew overhead. The air carried a mix of the fresh water smell and something faintly different. Samuel couldn't explain it, but he felt it. Something about this place was not ordinary. They followed the water's curve and soon came to a small open area where the river widened into a shallow pool. The pool was surrounded by thick plants, and in the middle, a few wooden logs were arranged in a strange way, almost like another barrier was being built, just like the one they had removed earlier. Samuel's breath caught for a moment. "This is where it started," he whispered. Tawa walked forward carefully and touched one of the logs. It moved easily. "Someone is doing this," he said in a low voice. Elder Whitehawk stepped into the clearing and looked at the pool. His face remained calm, but Samuel could sense the thoughts running through his mind. "Someone tried to stop the water," the elder said softly. "Not nature, people." They looked around the clearing. There were more signs now, small bits of cloth, footprints, and marks on tree trunks. Whoever had been here had worked quietly, trying not to be seen. But nature always leaves traces even when people do not want it to. Samuel walked a little further along the riverbank and found a broken wooden bucket half hidden under some leaves. He lifted it and looked at the elder. "This doesn't belong to your people," he said. The elder shook his head. "No, but now we know the river did not change itself. Someone changed it." The group sat down near the edge of the pool. The sun filtered softly through the leaves and the water made a quiet sound. For a moment it felt like the world itself was holding its breath again. The elder spoke in a steady voice. "When something threatens the land, we do not turn away. We listen, we learn, and we act with wisdom." Samuel listened carefully. He respected the elder's way of seeing the world. It was calm and thoughtful. The elder didn't rush to blame anyone. He simply wanted to understand. As they rested by the pool, Samuel thought about his own journey. For years he had walked alone, never staying in one place long enough to care about what happened to it. But here things were different. These people were not just surviving, they were protecting something precious. Their land was their heart. After some time, they began to carefully remove the logs and branches from the pool, just as they had done before. The clear water flowed more freely and the strange smell grew faint. Birds returned to the branches nearby. The land felt lighter, as if it was slowly healing itself. But this time they didn't leave immediately. Samuel walked around the clearing, marking the trees with small stones so he could return later if needed. He wanted to keep watch. He didn't want someone to block the river again. Before they left, Elder Whitehawk stood at the edge of the pool and placed his hand gently on the water. His voice was soft, almost like a song. Samuel didn't understand the words, but he could feel their meaning. It was a promise to protect the land and its people. The walk back to the village was slower, but their hearts were steady. Samuel walked beside Tawa, who said quietly, "This is not the end. Someone will return?" Samuel nodded. "Yes, but so will we." When they reached the camp, the people welcomed them with quiet smiles. The children ran to the river, dipping their hands into the clean water. Laughter filled the air. It wasn't loud or wild. It was soft and full of hope. The elder spoke a few words to the tribe, telling them what they had seen. No one panicked. They listened carefully, trusting their elder's calmness. As the sun set that evening, the sky turned gold and pink. Samuel sat alone near the river. The water sparkled gently. He thought about the people who had tried to stop the river. He didn't know who they were or why they had done it. But he knew this: the tribe would not give up, and neither would he. For the first time in his life, Samuel felt not like a traveler passing through, but like a guardian, standing still for something that mattered. The river wasn't just water anymore. It was a lifeline, a bond between people and land, and that bond needed protecting. That night, as stars filled the sky, the elder came to sit beside Samuel. They didn't speak much. They didn't need to. The sound of the flowing water said enough. Something inside Samuel whispered that the days ahead would bring bigger changes than anyone could imagine. And in that quiet moment, with the stars shining above and the river singing softly, Samuel understood. His story and the tribe's story were now tied together. The next morning, the light touched the camp softly, like a quiet hand brushing away the night. The river near the village flowed clearly now, singing its gentle song. Children played near the water's edge with small stones, laughing softly. Women filled their clay bowls, their faces brighter than the days before. The camp felt alive again, but under that warm surface there was still a soft current of worry. Everyone knew the trouble with the river had not happened on its own. Samuel sat on a smooth rock near the water, watching the sun rise. The soft orange color spread across the sky, touching the red hills far away. He had always loved mornings like this, but this morning felt more important than any other. He was not just passing through. He was part of something now. Elder Whitehawk slowly walked toward him. Even though the elder was older, his steps were sure and strong. His eyes were calm, but they held the weight of wisdom. He stopped beside Samuel and looked at the water for a long time before speaking. "The river gives life," he said quietly. "But when someone touches the river with wrong hands, they touch the soul of the tribe." Samuel nodded slowly. He didn't need a long explanation to understand. This river was not just water for these people. It was their breath, their food, their songs, and their memories. If anything happened to it, everything in their world would change. The elder turned to Samuel. "I want you to walk with me today," he said. Samuel stood and followed without a question. They walked slowly through the camp, past the small fires where the women cooked and the men sat mending their tools. People greeted the elder with quiet respect. Some of them looked at Samuel too, not with fear, not with doubt, but with a growing trust. In just a short time, he had become more than a stranger. At the edge of the camp, the elder led him toward a tall rock that looked over the valley. From this high place, Samuel could see the whole land: the red hills, the narrow river, the soft desert plants, and the endless sky. It was a view that carried both beauty and strength. The elder stood still for a moment, letting the wind brush his face. "This land has seen many things," the elder said. "Seasons change. People come and go, but the river stays. The land remembers." Samuel listened carefully. He knew the elder didn't speak just to fill the air. Every word carried a meaning deeper than the surface. "There will be people," the elder continued, "who do not understand what the river means to us. They see only land, only water, but we see our ancestors here. We see our children's future." Samuel felt something move inside him. He was not born into this tribe, but he understood their feeling. He too had walked through lands that people did not respect. He had seen places forgotten, rivers left to dry, and forests cut down without thought. And now, standing here with the elder, he felt how much it mattered to protect something before it was lost. That afternoon, the tribe gathered near the large fire at the center of the camp. The sun was warm, and the wind carried the scent of sage and dry earth. Everyone sat in a wide circle. The elder stood in the middle. Beside him stood Samuel and Tawa. The elder spoke to the people in his native language, and one of the young men translated for Samuel. "We have seen signs along the river," the elder said. "We know someone has touched it, but they are not of this land. We will not fear them. We will not run from them. We will protect what is ours with wisdom, not anger." The people listened quietly. No one shouted or panicked. These were people who had faced hard seasons before. They knew how to stay calm, even when worry tried to knock on their hearts. Samuel stood silently among them. He wasn't used to standing in front of a whole community. He had always been alone on his journeys. But today something was different. When the elder spoke his name, everyone turned to look at him. The elder placed a gentle hand on his shoulder and said, "This man came from far away, but the river has accepted him. He has walked with us. He has listened to the land. He is part of this story now." Samuel felt a warmth rise in his chest. He had never expected such words. A few of the women nodded with small smiles. Some of the men gave short nods too, a quiet sign of respect. In the days that followed, Samuel and a few young men began to keep watch near the river. They built simple markers along the path to see if anyone crossed during the night. The nights were peaceful at first. The stars covered the desert like silver sand. Samuel would lie on the ground, staring at the wide sky, listening to the soft sound of water flowing. Sometimes Tawa would sit beside him, and they would talk quietly about their lives, about the places Samuel had seen and the stories Tawa had grown up hearing. Each night, Samuel felt more connected to the tribe. It was not the kind of connection that needed loud words. It was built slowly through shared silence, shared watchfulness, and shared purpose. One evening, as the moon climbed high, Samuel sat alone near the river. The air was cool and the night was still. But something caught his attention, a faint rustling sound near the rocks upstream. It wasn't the sound of animals. It was softer, slower. He turned his head and listened carefully. His years of traveling had trained his ears well. Someone was there. He didn't move suddenly. He stayed quiet, letting the sound guide him. A shadow passed briefly behind the rocks, and then the sound faded. Samuel didn't chase it. He simply marked the place in his memory. Someone had returned to the river. The elder had been right. This story was not finished yet. The next morning, he told Elder Whitehawk what he had heard. The elder listened calmly, his face thoughtful. "The land speaks softly to those who listen," he said. "This means we must be careful." They decided to keep extra watch that night, not with anger or fear, but with patience. Samuel and Tawa returned to the river after sunset. The air was cool again and the moon hung bright and round. They sat silently near the rocks, listening. Hours passed slowly, but neither of them grew restless. The land was quiet, but in that silence they found strength. The tribe had lived this way for generations, listening more than speaking, observing more than rushing. Then, in the middle of the night, a soft sound came again. Samuel and Tawa exchanged a glance. It was the same rustling near the upstream rocks. This time they moved slowly and quietly toward the sound. When they reached the rocks, they saw clear footprints near the water, fresh ones. They didn't see the person who made them, but they knew someone had been there just moments before. Tawa touched the ground gently. "They are not from our tribe," he whispered. Samuel nodded. "They were here and left when they heard us." They followed the footprints a little way upstream. They led to a path through tall grass and then disappeared into the darkness of the desert. Samuel didn't go any further. The elder had told them to be patient. They returned to the camp and shared what they saw. The elder listened carefully to every word. His eyes were calm. "The river is teaching us," he said softly. "It wants us to be ready, not with anger, but with understanding." The next few days passed with quiet planning. The tribe worked together to place small signs and markers near the river, so they could tell if anyone came again. Samuel helped build them. It wasn't about trapping anyone. It was about understanding what was happening. During this time, Samuel spent more and more hours near the elder. Whitehawk shared stories of the land, how their ancestors had come to live here, how the river had carried their songs through time, and how every stone and tree held a piece of memory. Samuel listened with quiet respect. These stories were more than words. They were like roots that held the tribe together. One night, as the fire glowed softly and the stars shone bright, the elder spoke to Samuel alone. "When you came to our land, you carried only your own journey," he said. "But now you carry ours too. You have become a bridge between what was and what is coming." Samuel didn't know how to answer, but in his heart he felt a quiet pride. He was no longer a man just walking through the world. He was standing for something meaningful. The river flowed softly that night, almost as if it too was listening. The tribe was ready, not with fear, but with unity. Samuel understood that sometimes strength doesn't come from fighting. It comes from standing together, from listening, and from holding on to what matters. As the wind brushed gently through the trees and the stars whispered above, Samuel looked toward the river and made a silent promise to himself. Whatever came next, he would stand with these people. He would not walk away. The morning light returned softly like a kind friend. The sky turned a pale gold and the red hills glowed in the distance. The river, clear and steady, flowed through the valley with a peaceful sound. In the Apache camp, everyone was awake early. There was a calm feeling in the air, different from the heavy silence of the first day Samuel had arrived. Now the people moved with quiet strength. The fear that once held their hearts was no longer as strong. They had faced the unknown together and were no longer alone in it. Samuel sat near the water, his hands resting on his knees. He watched the ripples spread slowly across the surface. Every small wave seemed to tell a story. When he first came to this land, the river was weak and still. Now it was alive again. Life had returned to the camp along with the water. The children played near the riverbank, splashing the cool water on their faces and laughing softly. Their voices were like music that blended with the sound of flowing water. Elder Whitehawk walked toward him, his silver hair shining faintly in the sunlight. He stood quietly beside Samuel for a long time without saying anything. They didn't need words. Sometimes silence carried more meaning than a long speech. The elder slowly sat down next to him, his old hands resting on his knees. He looked at the water too, his eyes reflecting years of memory and wisdom. "The river is strong again," the elder finally said, his voice soft but full of calm. "And so is the heart of our people." Samuel nodded slowly. He had never thought he would be part of a story like this. For many years he had wandered from place to place without a reason to stay. He had seen rivers, mountains, and forests, but none of those places had held him the way this valley now did. This land, with its quiet people and soft songs, had given him something he had never truly had before: belonging. The elder placed his hand gently on the ground beside him. "This land remembers everyone who walks with kindness," he said. "When you helped the river, you helped our people. The land will not forget." Samuel looked down at the water again. He thought about the first night he arrived at the camp. He had been tired, unsure, and ready to keep walking. But then he saw their faces. He saw their quiet strength, their way of living in harmony with the land. Something had changed in him that day. He was no longer just passing through. In the following days, the tribe continued to protect the river carefully. They built small markers upstream so they would always know if someone tried to change its path again. Samuel worked with Tawa and other young men, teaching them how to spot signs in the sand and on the trees. He didn't bring these people new knowledge, they already had their wisdom. But together, they shared their ways, combining old and new understanding of the land. At night, the tribe often gathered near the big fire at the center of the camp. The air would fill with soft singing, warm laughter, and the gentle crackle of burning wood. Samuel would sit among them, listening. He didn't know all the words of their songs, but he understood their meaning. They were songs of gratitude, songs that spoke to the river, the earth, and the sky. Each sound felt like it belonged to the land itself. One evening, as the fire danced in the center, Elder Whitehawk stood and raised his hand. The singing quieted slowly. Everyone turned their eyes toward him. The elder's face was peaceful, and his eyes shone with a soft light. He looked at Samuel and then at the tribe. "This man came to us as a stranger," the elder said slowly. "He carried only his footsteps and the dust of many roads. But he listened to the land. He helped when help was needed. He gave us not his voice but his heart, and for that, he will not be a stranger anymore." A quiet wave of emotion moved through the people. Samuel felt something warm rise in his chest. He had never wanted praise, and yet, hearing these words felt like a weight gently lifting from his shoulders. For the first time in many years, he felt truly seen. The elder continued, "Our ways teach us to honor those who walk with us in times of need. Samuel has walked with us. He has become part of our story." The elder then said something in Apache. One of the young men translated softly, "The elder says, you saved our people, and when a man saves a people, the people become his home." Samuel lowered his head slightly, his throat tight with emotion. He didn't know how to respond. He had not done what he did to become a hero. He had done it because it was the right thing to do. But now these people were offering him something more than thanks. They were offering him a place to belong. The elder looked toward a young woman standing near the fire. She had soft eyes and long dark hair that shone in the firelight. Samuel had noticed her many times but had never spoken much to her. She was the elder's daughter, Ayanna. She stepped forward slowly, her steps quiet and graceful. The elder placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. He turned to Samuel and spoke again. "You gave your courage to our tribe, and our tribe will give you its trust. My daughter Ayanna will stand beside you, not because of debt, but because the river itself has tied your path to ours." The people sat silently, watching with calm faces. There was no pressure in their eyes, no force. It was their way of showing honor, trust, and respect. Ayanna lifted her eyes slightly and looked at Samuel. There was no fear in her face, only quiet strength and understanding. She was not a gift to be given away. She was a woman of her people, strong in her own spirit. The elder's words were not about ownership. They were about unity, about two lives crossing at a moment of meaning. Samuel stood slowly. He had spent years running from roots, from anything that would tie him down, but now, standing before these people, he felt something he had never felt before. He felt peace. He placed his hand gently over his heart and then lowered his head toward the elder and the tribe. "I came here with nothing," he said softly, his voice steady. "But you gave me a place to stand. You gave me water, warmth, and trust. I will honor this, not with words, but with my life." The elder nodded slowly, a soft smile on his face. The tribe's quiet approval was clear in their eyes. Ayanna stepped forward, standing beside Samuel. It was a simple gesture, but it carried 1,000 unspoken words. Two paths had become one, not through force, not through fear, but through trust. The days turned into weeks. The river remained clean and strong. Samuel worked with the tribe, learning their ways and teaching them small things he had learned in his travels. The children followed him with curious eyes, asking questions about the world beyond the hills. The men began to treat him as one of their own. The women trusted him as part of their circle. He was no longer an outsider. Every evening when the sun sank behind the red rocks, Samuel and Ayanna would walk along the river together. They didn't always speak. Sometimes they just walked side by side, listening to the water. Ayanna would tell him stories of her childhood, about how she used to sit on the rocks and watch the stars. Samuel would tell her about the lands he had walked through, the rivers he had crossed alone. Each story brought them closer. Elder Whitehawk often watched them from a distance with quiet eyes. He had lived many seasons and seen many changes, but he knew one truth well. When hearts meet through kindness, the land itself grows stronger. One night, as the tribe gathered for a special ceremony, Samuel stood beside Ayanna near the fire. The elder raised his hands toward the stars. The whole tribe followed his gesture, their faces shining in the firelight. They were not only celebrating the return of their river, but also the bond that had formed, a bond between a wanderer and a people who had opened their hearts. Samuel closed his eyes, letting the sound of the river, the songs, and the soft wind fill him. For the first time in his life, he wasn't dreaming of another place to run to. He was already home. In the months that followed, Samuel became a quiet part of the tribe's life. He worked, he listened, he laughed. He walked the land not as a stranger, but as someone who belonged. The elder's words often returned to him. The land remembers those who walk with kindness. He carried those words in his heart like a gentle flame that would never go out. Years later, people would still tell the story of the stranger who came when the river was dying. They would speak of how he listened to the land, how he stood with them, and how the river sang again because of it. But for Samuel, it was not about being remembered as a hero. It was about finding his place by the water, among people who had shown him what it truly meant to belong. The stars shone bright that night as the fire slowly faded. Samuel looked at Ayanna, at the elder, at the quiet faces around him. The journey that began with tired feet and an empty heart had brought him to this moment, a moment of quiet peace, where he was no longer alone. The river flowed on, carrying its song into the night as if whispering, "This is home."